Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Taralaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha. I'm first of all offering my millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasarashishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Gosvami Maharaj. And the same again, millions of times unto the lotus feet of our most beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasarashishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and all our Rupa Nuga Guru Vargya, and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, my Dandavat pranams. So today is the 15th day of our VRAJA-MANDAL PARIKRAMA. We started on the 24th of October with the Purnima, and we completed our Vrindavan Parikrama, and now we're safely settled in Giriraj Govardhan. Gurudev used to say, sometimes he would announce how many days we had been traveling, and he would also comment, he would say, by the mercy of Srimati Radharani, there has been no mishap or no accident so far. And he would be expressing his gratitude that all the powers that be had given us a safe parikrama up to date. So I remember distinctly one time, it was on the 15th day, when he declared his gratitude to all those powerful personalities who were arranging for our successful parikrama. So we also can express our gratitude that we've come this far. Or I can express my gratitude that this audio idea hasn't been sabotaged by the cyberspace masters, whatever that means. So the internet is still coming, so I can send these out each day. So today we're going to Manasaganga, and we'll see also Manasi Devi, and we'll see Brahma-kunda, and we'll see Chakratirtha, Shivji, and we'll hear the glories of Sanatana Goswami. We'll go to Sanatana Goswami's bhajana-kutira. So we're going to circumambulate the inner, like the stomach of Giriraj Govardhan. We'll also go to Mukharavinda, the beautiful face of Giriraj Govardhan. But first, we'll go to the most beautiful place of Hari-deva, the temple of Hari-deva, and we'll take his darshan and we'll hear something of the glories of Hari-deva. So when we come into this temple, it's a very high temple. It used to be about 4 stories higher, and the tyrannical Aurangzeb, he destroyed those top 3 floors. But we are left with the bottom ground floor, which is still very opulent, built of large red sandstone, and we climb up high steps to climb in. In the last couple of years, it's been renovated nicely. They've fixed up the courtyard, and they've fixed up the inside and the roof, and they've cemented over a lot of the cracks. So it's looking a lot more healthy than it did in previous years. But it has a very large kirtan hall, and Srila Gurudev would always have us run up and down with our kirtan party, chanting, and he would be encouraging us to have very enthusiastic kirtan there, because the height of the ceiling lends a very good acoustic dynamic to that place. So we take darshan of the beautiful Hari-deva. Of course, this is a Pratibhu Hari-deva. The original Hari-deva was installed by Brajanava 5,000 years ago. That original Hari-deva is actually now in Kanpur. But we should understand that the Pratibhu deity that we see is non-different to Brajendranandan Sri Krishna, to Hari-deva, to Giridhari, to Giri Govardhan. This form of Hari-deva is non-different. We know, we've been speaking regularly, how Krishna, he never steps a foot outside of Vrindavan. Vrindavanam parityaja mam ekam nagachati. That never one single foot he steps outside. So this Hari-deva that we're seeing is none other than that Supreme Person who lifted Giriraj Govardhan to protect his dear family members, the Brijbasis. So yesterday I described the first part of this Leela, up to the place where Krishna had manifested himself as Giriraj, and he'd consumed all the offerings that the Brijbasis had offered him, and he'd have called out for more, Anayor or Anore. And the Brijbasis had been most satisfied. But the day after this happened, of course, Indra had many of his spies around, and they had reported to Indra that his yajna, his sacrifice, had been sabotaged by this young boy, this darkish, blackish, beautiful young cowherd boy, Krishna. And Indra became incensed with fury. His pride just completely clouded his intelligence totally, and he decided that he would teach the Brijbasis a lesson they would never forget. He would annihilate, he would murder, wipe off the map the whole of Braj. So to do such a huge thing, he had to cut loose the Shambhantaka clouds that were roped together by ropes of wind. And it's described in the scripture that such a big endeavor just to drown out a village, these clouds, they were capable of drowning out the whole universe, what to speak of one little village. But Indra, in the bewilderment of his anger, cut these enormous clouds freed from their bindings. And I want to read a little bit today from Gopal Champu, because Srila Jiva Goswami, he describes this pastime in an extraordinary light, very beautifully. So this was a day after they celebrated their parikrama of Giriraj Govardhan. They'd put the cows and the Brahmins in front, and they'd played so much festive music, and they'd all dressed very nicely, and they danced and sung their whole way around Giriraj Govardhan. Then they took a beautiful feast, and then the next day, it's described that first from the north an icy wind began blowing, and black clouds appeared while thunder rolled. The cowherds brought the cows to the sheds, and seeing the bad omens, surrounded Krishna and remained in that position. On Krishna's order, they went to Govardhan, and looking up, they remained there. Krishna stated, "If Indra is producing this rain to destroy the universe, Govardhan, giver of mercy, will be merciful." When they came near the mountain, in order to clear all the obstacles, the cowherds and Krishna remained there. Govardhan began to keep his promise. First the people had taken shelter of courtyards, strongholds, cottages, banyan trees and slopes, but then they were afflicted by the crooked blasts of wind, which felled huge trees and made terrifying sounds. When the people gave up Braj, the wind wandered about with an ever-increasing boldness. The streams of rain appeared to be arrows released from Indra's bow, his rainbow. The hail was hard like thunderbolts. Thunderbolts wandered about, making the sun fall from its orbit. In this condition, when all the cowherds surrendered to Krishna, Krishna lifted Govardhan in his hand in such a way that no one at all could speculate how he did it. It's described in Ananda Vrindavan Champu how when Krishna saw his beloveds tormented by these ferocious pillars of rain, that he quickly ran from his porch and Purnamasi arranged for him Yogamaya that not a single drop of water would touch him, and then he lifted Giriraj Govardhan very easily. And then the rest of the story Jiva Goswami is going to tell. I'm continuing to read now. Seeing that the rains of Indra, maker of clouds, was definitely causing fear and pain, Krishna, who produces auspiciousness, first began to reflect. I think that Indra, with pride, believes that I am far away. Therefore I should crush his pride. I am the only resort for the cowherds. I and my followers attain great bliss in the cowsheds. They are my heart. I treasure them as my very life. It's described that the small calves were taking shelter under their mothers. The rain was so ferocious. When there was confusion, as Krishna held up the mountain, he began to discuss with Balaram. Awareness of their mutual affection produced discussion about holding up the mountain. Lifting that mountain, his hairs stood on end like needles. He reduced the pride of the rumbling thunder by his sweet, deep voice, extending far in the distance to his family of cowherds, having baseless fear. With affection he spoke clearly. Then Krishna, he calls all the cowherds and the gopis to come and take shelter under Giriraj Govardhan. O mother, do not delay. O father, please come. O elders, bring everyone. When Balaram brought them all close, he again said to them, O father, do not fear. O mother, do not be troubled. O friends, be happy. I am not exerting myself at all, since merciful Govardhan is himself raising up on my hand and is light like a piece of cotton. I see within the mountain a hole, having a ladder, looking like Patala. Since the mountain is broad, there is no water in the central area, and it is not slippery. Seeing that they were thinking that he could not hold the mountain, and it would fall, he again spoke, O respectable people, do not forbid me to do this, on the advice of my mother. How can the mountain fall from the hand of someone lifting it? However, do not delay very long. Seeing your suffering, I will tremble, and then the mountain will fall. Quickly, come under the mountain. Understanding Krishna's desire, the cowherds came under the mountain. They did not think of him as their protector, but as their only object of service, to be protected. There was a hall equipped with a ladder, by which one could easily enter into the place lit by jewels. Its walls were studded with gems, just like a house, and it had a splendid ceiling. The floors were embedded with touchstones, and the place was divided into rooms. Fresh water was available. A gentle wind, pleasant to the touch, was blowing. He held up the mountain casually in his left hand while smiling. He remained standing in that broad interior with his attractive form. With his arm on a friend's shoulder, he held his flute in his bent hand. The inhabitants of Braj saw him with joy, eagerness, and fear. They became stunned. Govardhan was like a big house, decorated with jewels, in which Krishna was situated like a sapphire pillar. Krishna's arm was like a jeweled stick, and the mountain was like an umbrella above. The rains falling everywhere were like strings of pearls. The people of Braj experienced the rain as a splendor. When Yashoda, along with Rohini, held Krishna's sides, this is described by poets as follows. He was held on the sides by his two mothers, who began wiping his lotus face repeatedly. Seeing his amazing actions, Nanda and others stood with hair standing on end. Then with smiling lotus eyes, with hands making a dancer's gestures, holding the mountain on his left hand, he shouted, "Victory, victory!" while playing. In front of Krishna, Balaram, like an actor in a drama, amused all the jovial people. while outside there were great rainstorms, roaring wind, hard hail, thunder and dark clouds, which caused suffering. Inside there was no rain. There were sweet voices, pleasant breezes, attractive songs, rays of light, and Krishna, with remarkable beauty, was producing happiness all around him. There was singing, eulogies, and dancing by skillful performers. The best residents gave charity. Knowers of Vedic customs chanted auspicious prayers. The children played. Everyone's pride was reduced and their praying for Krishna increased. What happiness did the lifter of the mountain not give to them? Krishna's praiseworthy glance was humble to the elders, smiling to his equals, filled with tears to his followers, and sometimes unsteady. But it was crooked towards Indra. Towards each of them he expressed an appropriate meaning. Any other action would have been a fault of redundancy. Drinking the nectar from the rays of his moon-like face, the cows gave up hunger and thirst for 7 days and nights. What to speak of the people who had affection for him? The people became filled with the juicy nectar emanating from his face. Thinking that he was hungry and thirsty, his mother kept filling him with juicy nectar. Ananta, with his 1,000 mouths, describing for 7 kalpas, cannot complete the glories of Krishna's pastime of holding the mountain for 7 days and nights. If a poet quickly tries to describe this in 3 or 4 verses, devoid of ornaments, he will end in despair. When this situation prevailed, Indra then resorted to evil means. So now it's described how Indra, when he understands from his spies that he's not having an effect on the Brijbasis, this increases his anger. So he makes all kinds of different arrangements with the devas, with Agni to shoot fire balls, and Vayu to increase the wind, and Varunadev to increase the water. But none of this was having any effect. And at one point, a yaksha comes into the court of Indra, who is coming from, this yaksha is coming from Kamsa. And Kamsa has come to congratulate Indra on the work that he's doing of annihilating the Brijbasis. We know, of course, that Kamsa has tried in so many ways to kill Krishna. But now Kamsa is feeling very excited because he thinks that Indra is going to do his work for him. So he sends one yaksha to congratulate Indra on the work that he's doing. And the yaksha comes in front of Indra and is expressing his gratitude from Kamsa and saying that, he says, "What is the necessity of accepting sacrifices from these cowherds? Taking permission, we will perform sacrifices for you." So then this yaksha is saying that they will now perform sacrifices to Indra, which of course they weren't doing previously. They were just doing to Shivji and Durga Ma. But when Indra heard this coming from the yaksha, it's described that Indra became astonished. He then began to think, "Oh, by taking intoxicants, I have destroyed my intelligence. I have contradicted the norms by showing friendship with the enemy. I have thus proved the meaning of my name, breaker of the family rules. Since I was proud, it is proper that I have been defeated, for it is seen that he who is overcome by pride will be defeated." So this yaksha sparked a understanding in Indra of what he had done wrong. Indra had no love for Kamsa. He knew that Kamsa was from the demon stock. So when Kamsa was congratulating Indra, that really hurt Indra's deeper pride of his identity as being the master of the heavenly planets and always warring with the demon planets. So when this yaksha spoke, Indra was very much aware of his demoniac act in trying to annihilate the Brajavasis. And then Indra spoke to his servants, revealing this. He said, "Let this be. Withdraw the clouds of destruction. Be tolerant to the son of Nanda, since he is my younger brother. We have been taught a lesson. How can we think of defeating Krishna?" And then he told this messenger, he said, "I have understood that though you are constantly angry at Krishna, you remain in fear of him." He's relating this to Kamsa. Through the messenger, he's giving this message to the Yaksha to give back to Kamsa. He says, "I have understood that though you are constantly angry at Krishna, you remain in fear of him. This increases my anger towards you. If this is true, then I will deal with the situation appropriately. I have 100-fold wrath, 1,000 eyes and millions of hands. Who can oppose me? Your wealth has been spent on Rakshasas, and you have lost the favor of the Devatas. Krishna will soon be the destroyer of the members of the Bhoja dynasty, like you." Hearing these words, the rascal Yaksha departed with a repentant heart. The message he delivered was useless, like urine in the waves. So from this point on, now Indra is trying to backtrack and appease Krishna for all his offenses. And then it's described that the clouds cleared, and Krishna, he roared loudly to the people, "Come out of the hall, and all the utensils gathered together. Bring them all together. Go quickly without fear." When he spoke these profound words clearly in that place, the clouds which were previously defeated by the power of Govardhan were defeated by his proud roaring. Accompanied by blaring music to stimulate the people to follow his orders, the people, along with the cows, shining like Krishna's body with fame and affection, emerged from the hall, resembling the heart of Govardhan. He who held up the mountain to protect his people and was filled with spontaneity, all qualities, beauty, tenderness, and love that spread everywhere, appeared before the eyes of the people at the base of the mountain. As he had raised the mountain, he put it down. Everyone saw this, but did not see exactly how he did it. Helplessly immersed in solid streams of prem, the cowherds met Krishna as he came from the hall and embraced him and welcomed him according to their status, from the elders down. The elder gopis respectfully decorated Krishna, conqueror of Indra, with attractive, auspicious items. Though he had conquered Indra, they put their hands on his head to bless him. He who has experienced this care in his heart will understand this type of care. Jiva Goswami quotes Shukadev describing the meeting between Yashoda after the lifting of Govardhan hill. Mother Yashoda, Mother Rohini, Nanda Maharaj and Balaram, the greatest of the strong, all embraced Krishna. Overwhelmed with affection, they offered him their blessings. So we see that Jiva Goswami is describing very beautifully the blissful nature of the Brajavasis. It's described that this pastime took in fact 7 days to go through. But for the Brajavasis, it seemed like it was just simply 7 hours. The Brajavasis were so satisfied with the constant darshan of Krishna. Their eyes were completely fixed on him for that whole period of time. It was such a wonderful arrangement for the Brajavasis to fully drink to their pleasure, their full pleasure, the full darshan of Krishna. So this mood is very sweet to appreciate. For Indra, this was like 7 millenniums. He tried to inundate the poor residents of Braj, but for the Brajavasis, they were so satisfied with the constant darshan of Krishna. Mother Yashoda is described was feeding Krishna. They were holding his sides, Mother Rohini and Mother Yashoda, and Krishna was glancing over the Brijbasis for the whole time. So this, we get a very close insight into the nature of the Brijbasis' hearts by this beautiful pastime, how they could relish to their heart's content, because normally Krishna would go cow grazing each day. There would be times during the day when they didn't have his darshan, but now for 7 continuous days, every single moment of the day, they had his constant darshan. So this is the Brijbasis' highest desire fulfilled, that they could just drink the beauty of Krishna's personality for those full 7 days. So this pastime is doing all kinds of arrangements that Krishna is facilitating by this pastime, not only humbling the pride of Indra, but he's also nourishing his Brijbasis. Krishna comes to give mercy to his devotees more than he comes to chastise the demons. The demons are like a secondary aspect. The demons' chastisement is an excuse to increase the happiness of Krishna's devotees. So Krishna's family members, the Brijbasis, were so satisfied by this pastime. And when Krishna emerged from the mountain, then it's described how I've described it from the Bhagavatam, how Mother Yashoda, Nanda Baba, Rohini and Balaram, they all approached Krishna, and they were so pleased with the act that he had performed in holding up Govardhan. Of course, none of the Brijbasis for a moment thought that just Krishna was lifting up Govardhan. They thought that either Govardhan had, like Indra thought, developed his wings again and was actually flying, or they thought that Nanda Baba and the elder Gopas were holding up Giriraj, or the Sakas were also holding up Giriraj. Of course, Gurudev explains that Srimati Radharani had indicated to Giriraj, if you waver one fraction and start to move at all, I will incinerate you to ashes. So ultimately it's Swarup Shakti, Sri Radha, who was holding up Giriraj Govardhan. But this whole pastime fills the hearts of the devotees with great pleasure and joy to appreciate the Brijbasis' fortune for that period of time, when it's described in the scripture how they were having so much festivity, dancing and singing and recitations and so on were going on while Krishna was holding up Giriraj. But of course Indra, he just became more and more incensed with anger until he understood his demoniac act when Kamsa's servant approached him. So this is the beautiful pastime of raising Giriraj Govardhan for the pleasure of the Brijbasis and for the chastisement of Indra. And then after this pastime, as we discussed yesterday at Govinda-kunda, Krishna, he was wandering on the top of Giriraj Govardhan, and then Indra came to offer his regrets and to beg for forgiveness from Krishna. So that part of the pastime I already described. So it's also explained that Krishna was arranging this for the preparation of his Rasa-lila pastime. Krishna had reached the age of 7. He had reached his Kishora age, and he was preparing in the autumn season for his beginning his Rasa-lila. That would be a few months after this. And it's described by the Acharyas that Krishna was in fact preparing the cleanliness of Braj by having this devastating rainfall fall everywhere. Ultimately, there was not even a blade of grass that was inconvenienced by that devastating rain. Not even an ant was affected in Braj. Everything remained, even though it's described how the trees crashed over at one time. Nevertheless, those trees again were quickly put into their places and they were resurrected And everything was completely as normal because Sudarshan Chakra had been whirling above Giriraj Govardhan, drinking all the waters that had been pouring into her, so that she would remain freed from that flooding. And at the same time, Mahadev's trident was whirling above, and it was deflecting Indra's thunderbolts. So the residents were totally protected, not only by the arms of Krishna entirely, but by Krishna's manifestations as far as Indra and Sudarshan Chakra were concerned. So this is the beautiful pastime, and we can tell it longer and longer. But the devotees are always thinking and remembering of the glory of this great personality that we're having darshan of now. Hari-deva, we can see his left hand is held up and his little pinky finger is there. And if you look very closely, he has a very childlike expression on his face, in fact. This murti is especially sweet. If you can come close to it or see any photograph of it, bring it up close, you'll see he looks like a child. He looks like a 7-year-old boy when his cloth is off and he's just there in his kopin. He has the body of a 7-year-old child. So this is the Hari-deva that we're fortunate enough today to have darshan of at the beginning of our little Manasi Ganga Parikrama. So now from Hari-deva we're going to go out back down the steps, and we're going to go a little for a few hundred yards, and we're going to come to Manasi Ganga herself, and then we'll take darshan and hear some pastimes about Manasi Ganga. Hari-deva ki jai, God Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol, Hare Krishna. So now we've come to Manasi Ganga. These beautiful steps, we can see they're very ornate, they're very solid, nicely built, guts all the way around encircling. Previously, at the western end, there was a place where the waters would flow in and out to keep the lake clear. But now that flow channel has been blocked. But nevertheless, the lake itself is generally very clear. They've put recently some filters around, and they aerate the water through different fountain systems. So they are trying to maintain it to their capacity. So we are blessed to have a nice darshan of Manasi Ganga. We understand that, of course, in this age, all of these holy places are being gradually covered over more and more. So it's always very encouraging when we come to these places and we see to what extent the different Braj foundations have taken into trying to maintain these kunds. But Manasi Ganga is definitely a very, very attractive place for the devotees to sit and have darshan and hear of its glories. So there's a few stories about the origin of Manasi Ganga. One is that when Krishna, he killed the Vatsasura, the calf demon, that the gopis, just like the manifestation of Radha-kunda, they told Krishna, "Oh, you are too contaminated to come in our company now. You have killed a calf." But Krishna said, "But this was a calf demon. This demon only wanted to hurt the suckers and the other cows. So what is the problem with that?" And the Radharani replied, "Still, it was in the body of a calf. And you killed a calf, so shastrically you are completely contaminated." So Krishna begged, "Well, what must I do to relieve myself of this contamination?" And Srimati said, "Oh, you must take bath in Ganga Devi." So then Krishna, he called Ganga Devi to come, and all the gopis and the sakas, they saw Ganga Devi riding on her crocodile carrier, and she came to that very spot, and formed that beautiful lake, and Krishna took his bath in there, and then the gopis were very satisfied that Krishna was now purified again after his killing of a calf demon. So this is one story. Another story is that the residents of Braj, Nanda, Yashoda, and Upananda, Abhinanda, all the elder gopis, etc., they'd been hearing about the glories of Ganga Devi from Purnamasi and different people who had been traveling through Braj, and they were inspired with the desire to make a pilgrimage to go to Ganga Devi and take bath in there. They would have had to have traveled quite a few hundred miles in order to have had direct darshan of Ganga Devi. She was flowing to the north of Vrindavan, around Haridwar area. So it's a long journey, practically 1,000 miles, to reach that place. So they all decided that they would do this pilgrimage. But Krishna, he wasn't enthusiastic to leave Braj at all with all the Brijbasis. So when they arrived at Govardhan on their way from Nandagan and Varshana, then he arranged for, he said to the Brijbasis, now we should pray that Mother Ganga, she comes to this very spot and she'll give us her darshan here. And by the strength of our prayers, surely Mother Ganga, she will listen to us and hear us. So the Brijbasis, they listened to what Krishna said, and within a very short while, all the Brijbasis, they saw the sides of the hillside break open, and Mother Ganga came forth riding on her crocodile, and they all had darshan of Ganga Devi mounted on her crocodile. And the astonished Brijbasis were so grateful and thankful for her manifesting in that place, and at that time they all took their holy baths in her water and were very joyous, and a great festival manifested at that time. But this is also a second pastime describing the manifestation of Ganga Devi in Govardhan. In Vrindavan, all holy places meet, all tirthas meet within the mandal of Brajabhumi. So certainly Ganga Devi has her place there too, alongside her younger sister Jamuna Devi. So this is the very beautiful pastime that's described by Gurudev in his VRAJA-MANDAL PARIKRAMA book. Also tonight is the celebration of Deepali, where all the lamps, the deeps, are lit in glorification of different aspects within the Leelas of Krishna's manifestations. Particularly, Gurudev describes that Vamanadev, when he bound Bali in the ropes, looking for his third step, and eventually Bali, he cheated Vamanadev in a sense by begging that Vamanadev become the doorkeeper of his planet in the lower residences. And Vamanadev, he agreed to that. And when he came to take up that position as doorkeeper in Sutala Loka, in Bali Maharaj's kingdom, then all the Bali Maharaj made all the residents of Sutala Loka light lamps in glorification of the arrival of Vamanadev in Sutala Loka to protect the gates of Bali Maharaj. So Srila Gurudev says this is the first Deepavali festival. And then later, after that, was when Ram was returning to Ayodhya, and all the residents of Ayodhya who had been waiting patiently for 14 years for their Lord and Master and most beloved protector, Ram, to return with Sita, they all lit lamps all over the city of Ayodhya. But principally this festival also establishes good over evil, just to say it simply. So there are many different aspects to this festival. But tonight, at Manasiganga, where we are now having darshan, everything will be lit up beautifully with hundreds and thousands of lamps all around the lake here, celebrating the fortune of Krishna's being in Braj, nourishing all the Brijabasis and giving inspiration for those sadhaks who also want to connect with these highest conceptions that is everyone's potential within our hearts to reach and connect with these supreme sadhya of service to Sri Radha through the moods of the Brijabasis. So tonight this festival will be celebrated here at Manasiganga. Also there's a very beautiful Leela pastime that is described on this lake. There was a time when the gopis, they wanted to cross this lake, and they came with their pots of ghee and their butter and their milk, and they were looking for a boat, but by divine arrangement there was no boats at all to cross the lake, except one old, very dilapidated boat, with an older looking, dilapidated type of boatman too. He was just sleeping in the boat, and the gopis saw no other option except to use this older boat. So they approached that boatman and they begged him to please take them across. And after much haggling about the cost, etc., they decided that they would give some butter and some milk in cost for their journey across the lake. So that boatman, he began to row all the gopis and their pots across the lake. When he got about halfway, he just told the gopis, "Oh, now I'm tired, I'm just going to rest for a little while." And then he just stopped rowing and proceeded just to lie down. And then he said, "Perhaps there'll be a couple of you who would like to massage my arms because they're very tired after all the rowing." And the gopis responded, "We won't massage your arms, we'll throw you into the lake unless you start rowing again." And then that boatman, he sat up and he began rowing a little bit more. And then he said, "But now I'm very hungry. I can't row anymore until I get my hunger satisfied." So then after more haggling, then the gopis, they finally gave him some butter and some milk to satisfy that boatman's hunger. And then the boatman was rowing a little bit more, and then some big black clouds started to come across in the sky, and the waves of the lake started to rock more and more. And then the boat started to fill up with water. And the boatman was saying, "You have to throw off these pots of butter and milk and yogurt, because otherwise the boat will sink." And the gopis could see that this was a fact, that the boat was starting to sink. So they hurriedly threw out their pots. But still the boat was sinking, even after they'd thrown out their pots of butter and ghee. So then the boatman, he said, "But now you have to throw out your jewelry, your golden jewelry and ornaments. They're too heavy also. This is what's loading the boat up." So the gopis could see that that was a truth. So they started to throw out all their ornaments, their jewelry and so on. And then the boatman said, "Actually, we're still sinking. And now you should all throw out your clothes." So at this time, the gopis, they looked, who is this boy? And then Sri Radha, she could see ultimately that this is her beloved disguised as this boatman. And then they were still afraid though, because the boat was looking like it was going to sink. And then finally, Sri Radha, she throws her arms around this boatman and beseeches him to please save them. And then Krishna, he reveals his true identity and quickly relieves the gopis of that distressful condition and brings them to the shore. So this pastime is very beautiful for the devotees to hear. And there are many different details in the story. In one story, it's described that the boatman, he has his foot in a hole in the boat, keeping the water out. And as they are approaching the other side, he takes his foot out, so all the water comes, his toe out, so all the water comes in. So this pastime we hear when we come to take darshan of this beautiful lake, Manasi Ganga. So Manasi Ganga Devi Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. So now we turn back up again towards Hari-deva, and we walk a little way up towards Hari-deva, and then we bear right, and we go down a very small gully, a small little street, and we come in to the beautiful small temple of Manasa Devi. And this Manasa Devi, we understand as Gaudiyas that she is none other than Yogamaya, Purnamasi Devi. The locals, they often see her as Durga Ma, but the devotees, they see her fully as Purnamasi, that manifestation of Yogamaya. We see that there are 4 faces when we have darshan, and unless you see them when there's no dressing or ornamentation on them, it's hard to understand who is who. But as we look at them straight, on the far right, the first face that we see is in fact Purnamasi or Durga Ma herself. And the second face is the lion that she's riding on. That's the second head. And then the third head is a murti of Gopal, of Krishna. That's the third head. And then the fourth head is a Govardhan Shila. So these are the identities of the 4 heads that we're looking at. But the devotees, we worship her as Purnamasi Devi, and we honor her with that mood. Purnamasi Devi, Yogamaya, of course, she is arranging for all of the pastimes to happen smoothly for the pleasure of Sri Krishna in Braj. Purnamasi, her son, is Sandipani Muni, where Krishna goes for his education after he's come to Mathura. Devaki and Vasudeva, they send him to Ujjain, to the ashram of Sandipani Muni, where he studies the 64 arts. But Sandipani Muni's mother is Purnamasi, and Purnamasi has been instructed by Narad that she should come to Vrindavan and she should assist in Krishna's pastimes. So in all of the pastimes, Purnamasi Devi has her influence constantly. When the gopis, for example, they come to perform rasa with Krishna, then it's Purnamasi who arranges for their duplicates to remain beside their husbands, so that their husbands never for a moment feel the slightest envy towards Krishna, or there's no upset in the mood of the gopis coming to dance with Krishna, that they're free to come, in fact, by the arrangement of Purnamasi. So Purnamasi is Yogamaya, and Yogamaya is one tattva, but for the Leela she becomes 2. She also becomes Vrindadevi. So there's Purnamasi, and Vrindadevi, of course, is the forest goddess, and she arranges so many of the very sweet pastimes in the forest. Vrindadevi is in the form of a goddess, and it's only the gopis and Krishna who meet with Vrindadevi. Mother Yashoda and Nanda Baba, there's no recorded writings of them meeting with Vrindadevi prominently. She's a goddess in the forest, and that's her place of activity. But she's of the same potency as Yogamaya, but she's in a young body, so she can attend the Ras Leela. Purnamasi is in an older body, like an ascetic, the older lady of the village, and she is always directing all the different details of the village life. Like when Jatila, for example, she becomes very envious, thinking that Krishna is trying to solicit her daughter-in-law, and she's always looking for some type of proof or evidence to bring to the authorities of Braj. And one day in her courtyard she finds Krishna's flute, and she thinks, oh, now I have the evidence. Now this is absolutely rock solid evidence. So she goes running to Purnamasi, says, look, I found Krishna's flute in my courtyard. This for sure means that Krishna has been coming to try and solicit my daughter-in-law. And Purnamasi just looked at her in astonishment and said, what do you mean, my dear? It was raining flutes last night. And Jyotila, she looks all around and she sees flutes everywhere. Everywhere are Krishna's flutes. So on occasions like this is how Purnamasi Devi, she interacts with all the Brijbasis to keep the Leela absolutely smooth and beautiful for Krishna's pleasure and his satisfaction. So when we come here and take darshan of the noble Purnamasi, we are appreciating all of her immense service to Krishna. Of course, Yogamaya is manifesting from Swarup Shakti, who is Sri Radha herself. So Yogamaya is a manifestation from Sri Radha, but Yogamaya is her own personality, and she is arranging diligently all of these beautiful, sweet arrangements so that Krishna can fulfill his heart's desire of spending 12 hours of the day in the company of the gopis. Out of the 24 hours in the day, it's described that Krishna is in separation from the gopis for 12 hours, and he's in direct meeting with them for 12 hours. So this is all facilitated by the divine potencies of Purnamasi. So there are hundreds, thousands, unlimited amounts of pastimes connected with Purnamasi. Her love for Radha and Krishna knows no bounds. She's always trying to secure their meeting places and trying to, every day she's arranging with Vrinda Devi how Krishna's pastime should proceed. She's arranging where the various Lakshmi Devis, the goddesses of the seasons, where they also should take up their daily activities. She puts, for example, the summer season should enter Radha Kund, where it's nice and warm for their pastimes. The winter season, perhaps, she puts in Kamyavan. And then the spring season is in Bahulavan. So all these forests are manifesting different seasonal flowers and growths for the pleasure of Radha and Krishna wandering through the beautiful forests of Braj. So Purnamasi and Vrindadevi, collectively, they're making all these different arrangements for the pleasure of Radha and Krishna, their daily sweet pastimes. So now we're going to have darshan. We're going to leave Manasi Devi and we're going to have darshan of Brahma-kunda. Brahma-kunda is right beside Manasi Devi. Where we are now, we can look over the top of the wall behind us and we can have the best darshan of Brahma-kunda. But this Brahma-kunda is in a very dilapidated condition today. This kund is the very place where Lord Brahma, he came and he offered beautiful prayers to appease Krishna after stealing the cowherd boys and the calves. And also it's a place, a sitting place of Nityananda Prabhu. He also came to this place. So Brahma-kunda is a very sacred kund indeed, but unfortunately it's really sunk into dilapidation right now. In fact, Srila Gurudev, at one time, I remember that there was a meeting at Manasi Ganga, and there was many of the older Brijbasis were there meeting with Srila Gurudev, and at that meeting, directly, Gurudev pledged publicly that he would be responsible for the renovation of Brahma-kunda. So he pledged at that meeting, so this was on Srila Gurudev's wish list that he wanted to actually manifest, but that was never accomplished, unfortunately, in his life, because that was perhaps in the beginning of 2000 that he made that pledge, but it was never fulfilled. So now we're just hoping that at some point someone will come forward and assist in the renovation of this beautiful special kund. There are special guts in the 4 directions, and these 4 directions are representing the 4 different sampradayas, because it's understood that Madhvacharya, he came here, Vallabhacharya, he came here, Ramanuja, he also was sitting in this area, and Nimbaditya was also here. So these 4 sampradayas are represented here. And of course this is where Lord Brahma himself, he sung mantras from the Samaveda and performed Abhishek of Sri Krishna when he was begging for forgiveness from his offense of that pastime of the Brahma Vimohan Leela. So this Brahma-kunda is right behind Manasi Devi. So we can also take darshan of that kund and remember in the past its glorious condition, and hope that in the future it again will be restored to that same condition. There's a foundation in Vrindavan at the moment called the Braj Foundation, and they are doing wonderful work restoring many of these places. We described yesterday Sankarshan Kund is also looking very beautiful now. They have restored it completely. So I haven't been to Brahma-kunda for 12 months or so I don't know whether work has started on there or not. So this is Brahma-kunda Ki Jai. Gold Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. So now we're going to proceed around Manasi Ganga in Parikrama. Today we're going to circumambulate her completely. So now we're going to follow the path along, and then we're going to come into the township of Govardhan. And before we reach the township, there's a very beautiful darshan on the right of Ram, Sita, Lakshman and Hanuman. We can offer our respects there. And then we come around the corner and we come into the village of Govardhan. And we walk through that village, and then we're following the general Parikrama path. And at one point we take a sharp right, and we come, which is on the northern side of Manasi Ganga, and we come to Chakra Tirtha. We come to this place of Lord Shiva, where Lord Shivji is worshipped, the chakra that Lord Shivji threw to protect Giriraj from the thunderbolts of Indra during Indra's devastation. So we glorify the seva of Lord Shiva. Lord Shivji, of course, we described much of his tattva the other day, but he is always seeking service of that Supreme Lord. Shivji himself, he came to Braj from Kailash. It's described in when Krishna was in Gokul, and he sat outside Krishna's house in Gokul wanting to have darshan. Mother Yashoda didn't want to take him out to this fearful yogi with his matted locks and fierce looks and tiger skin and damaru drum. And Krishna had been crying for a long time previous to that. And finally the elder gopis encouraged Krishna, just take him for darshan of that yogi and perhaps his crying might subside. So Mother Yashoda, she puts Krishna in a basket and covers him with all black cloth and puts black cudgel on his eyes and puts a black dot between his eyes to protect him from any inauspicious ghosts or anything that may come from seeing this fearsome yogi, because Mother Yashoda herself was intimidated by seeing Shivji in this form. So she was certainly thinking that her dear son was going to be also intimidated. But to her surprise and astonishment, when she took baby Krishna, who hadn't stopped crying for the last hour, in front of this fearsome yogi, immediately his crying stopped. Immediately he started to gurgle. And then Shivji, he was very satisfied with that darshan, and he told Mother Yashoda at that time, I'm going to sit and light my fire here, and whenever you feel any bad omens coming, I will throw some mustard seeds into this fire, and then any bad influence will immediately go away. So Shivji, he's already had darshan in Gokul, but now when this beautiful Govardhan Leela was being performed, he was able to participate by putting his trident alongside Sudarshan Chakra to protect the Brijbasis. So Shivji's mood is always of service to the Supreme, even though he's actually of the same tattva. He is Vishnu tattva himself, which is why we always honor his appearance day or on Shivaratri by by fasting and by not taking any grains, etc. We honor him as Vishnu tattva on that day of Shivaratri. So that mood is always prominent of seva within the heart of Shivji. As I described before, he is not in a mood of his own Godhead. He's in a mood of service to his Supreme Ishtadev, Sankarshan, or Lord Ram also. But certainly Brajendranandan Krishna, he was worshipping so much. So we come to this very beautiful temple, which is honoring that pastime that Shivji performed in protecting the back of Giriraj from the thunderbolts of Indra. So we very gratefully come to this place. This ghat is called Paranga Ghat, and also the gopis would cross over the Manasi Ganga from here, and sometimes this boat Nauka pastime is described as being performed from this side, but it's from either side, that beautiful pastime. Also in this place we've come to, right beside this Chakratirtha is the bhajana-kutira of Sanatana Goswami. Sanatana Goswami, he came here and was practicing his bhajan for a length of time. Sanatana Goswami, as we've described previously, would always seek a place near Lord Shivji. When he was in Nandagaon, he was near Nandishwar. When he's in Vrindavan with Madan Mohan, he is near Bankandi Mahadev. There's always a Shivji near Sanatana Goswami, as there are with practically all the other acharyas who had their pastimes in Vrindavan. So now our dear friend Sripad Bhaktivedanta Tapasri Maharaj is going to speak something on the glories of Sanatana Goswami.
All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. At Cakalesvara Tirtha, where we are now, in front of this Cakalesvara Mahadev temple is Sri Sanatana Goswami's bhajana-kutira. Sanatana Goswami occasionally used to reside here to perform bhajan, but because the mosquitoes here were a constant disturbance, he considered moving elsewhere. So at that time, when he was thinking like this, Cakalesvara Mahadev arrived, and he came in the guise of a Brahmin. And he spoke to Sanatana, and he said, "Oh Babaji, please do not move away from here. Stay here and freely perform your bhajan. From this day forth, no mosquitoes will ever bother you, and you can freely perform your bhajan." This is from VRAJA-MANDAL PARIKRAMA book. Sanatana Goswami's life is a very interesting life, because to begin with in his life he was forced to submit to ruling Muslim government, and his brother Rupa Goswami was also working for the Muslim government. In fact, they became ministers for the Muslim government, and they were living at Ramakeli. After some time, Mahaprabhu, he also visited Ramakeli, and he freed them, and they renounced everything for Lord Gauranga's service. They traveled extensively through VRAJA-MANDAL, discovering many Leela Sthans, pastime places of Radha Madhav. And having no fixed residence, they would sleep no more than an hour and a half per day under a tree or a bush. Sri Rupa and Sanatana spent all their time discussing, writing Krishna's pastimes and chanting the holy names. In fact, Sanatana Goswami, he was so renounced that he would just beg some wheat flour, roll it into a ball, and adding a touch of the Jamuna water and drop it into the fire without any salt, and he would bake this dough and offer this to his deity Madan Mohan. So he gave up all kinds of any enjoyment, and they just accepted the poorest ways of life as mendicants, just eating enough to maintain their own bodies. Eventually, the Radha Madan Mohan Mandir established by Sanatana Goswami was the first one to be opened in Vrindavan by the 6 Goswamis. And Sri Sanatana Goswami Pad, he's described as the personal extension of the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's the ideal spiritual master because he gives one the shelter at the lotus feet of Madan Mohan. So there's 3 deities, 3 main deities in Vrindavan: Madan Mohan, Govindaji and Gopinath. And these 3 deities are the life and soul of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Specifically, Madan Mohan has the quality of helping the beginner devotee understand their eternal relationship with Lord Krishna. Madan Mohan means Krishna who is indescribably beautiful, that he even attracts Cupid, Kamadev. So Sanatana Goswami is the Sambandha Acharya who gives us knowledge of our proper relationship with Krishna. And his deity, Madan Mohan, helps us overcome our attraction for material sense gratification, Cupid, and fix our minds on devotional service. Sanatana Goswami spent 43 years wandering from village to village in Vrindavan. And the Brajbasis, they had so much affection for him because he would talk to them and help them with any problems they were having, and they treated him like a father. So Mahaprabhu often said that Sri Sanatana Goswami was his favorite devotee because he was an ocean of love and mercy. Sanatana excelled all other devotees in his compassion towards the suffering souls. This is described in Bhakti Ratnakar. In his last days, he left his beloved deity of Madan Mohan with Krishnadas Brahmachari, his disciple, and he did bhajan here. And he used to walk also doing parikram. At that time, the parikram path was much wider than it is now. And he also had a daily vow of offering 1008 obeisances to Govardhan Hill and to any Vaishnav that he would meet. So understanding the difficulty of his pure devotee, Madan Mohan appeared one day and said, "Oh, Baba, you're too old. Don't take so much trouble to walk around Govardhan Hill every day." And so Sanatana, he was so fixed. He said, "This is my daily activities on my bhajan. I must maintain it." Since you're old, Madan Mohan was telling him, now you have to give up this vow. Starting to again walk, Sanatana, he replied, no, I will never give up my religious principles. He was so fixed in that this is his daily sadhana. So Sanatana Goswami's firm determination to complete that daily vow was of course pleasing to Sri Madan Mohan. But as we know, in the loving dealings between the Lord and his devotee, Krishna really desires to please his devotee. Krishna's desire to please his devotee often defeats the devotee's desire to please him, to please Krishna. So out of loving compassion for his devotee, Krishna stood on a large stone, a Govardhan Shila. And that Govardhan Shila, because Krishna also played his flute, that Govardhan Shila melted in ecstasy and captured the impressions of Krishna's lotus foot. So he presented this to Sanatana and said, if you circumambulate this Shila every day, it will be the same as going around Govardhan Hill every day. And he also added that this would not compromise his religious principles, the vows that he had taken. In Jaiva Dharma, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says that Sanatana Goswami was empowered to explain the esoteric aspects of Krishna's manifest and unmanifest Vraj Leelas. So Sanatana Goswami, he met Mahaprabhu again in Benares, in the house of Chandrasekhar. There, the Lord Mahaprabhu, he asked Sanatana, no, you should shave your beard and long hair. And he took some very old cloth from Tapan Mishra. And the Lord, being so pleased with Sanatana's humility and his submission, he instructed him for some time on the science of devotion. So in this, there are many tattvas that Mahaprabhu explained to Sanatana, and this Sanatana Shiksha is a very important part of our teachings, because in here is everything is broken down to understand the sambandha, the process, the relationship that we're developing with Krishna and his devotees. He elaborated on the position of the soul in the material world and the soul's constitutional nature as an eternal servant of Krishna. He also explained about Sarup Shakti, Maya Shakti, Tatashta Shakti, and the relative positions of karma, gyan, and bhakti. He showed how all scriptures have Krishna as their aim, and all the different forms, features, expansions, avatars of Krishna. He also explained about Golok, Vaikuntha. He explains the opulence of Vaikuntha and the sweetness in Vrindavan. He also explains about the illusion of Brahma. Then he discusses Krishna Prem and the two kinds of jivas. He explained the development of faith, gradations of devotees, 26 qualities of pure devotees, and the 3 characteristic features of a true Vaishnava. One really beautiful area as well, he explains about the kindness as a primary feature of Vaishnavas. And he gives the example of Haridas Thakur and Vasudev Datta, because as we know they Vasudeva Datta, he wanted to liberate the whole world. And Mahaprabhu explains that association with sadhus is indispensable to Krishna Bhakti. And bad association is detrimental to the growth of divine love. The meaning of surrender and self-abnegation were discussed. So then Mahaprabhu, he goes on, because this is a long, goes on for some days. Mahaprabhu is really instructing Sanatana Goswami very, very in minute detail. He explains about the two divisions of sadhana bhakti, Vaidhi sadhana bhakti and Raganuga sadhana bhakti, and the 64 branches of sadhana bhakti. Then he gives special emphasis on the 5 most essential, which is association of devotees, chanting the holy name, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, deity worship, and living in a holy place. Then he also talks about the 9 different methods of devotion and the devotees who attain perfection in each of them. Then again he goes into the internal and external development of Raganuga sadhana bhakti. Then explains about Bhav Bhakti, Prema Bhakti, the 9 stages of sadhana, and the characteristics of Bhav Bhakta, and the characteristics of a Prema Bhakta, Premi Bhakta. So Mahaprabhu continues his explanation, and in the conclusion he's giving the Atmaram verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. He explains the Atmaram verse in 61 different ways, because previously he had explained it, but this time he's explaining it completely, fully, in 61 different ways. So Mahaprabhu, he instructed Sanatana Goswami also to write all the truths of bhakti, to write them, to establish devotional service, to establish proper practices for the behavior of the devotees, and to install deities, and to reveal the proper methods of deity worship as well, and to excavate the lost holy places of pilgrimage in Vrindavan. So Sanatana Goswami, he was so humble, he was thinking, how can I write on these topics? Because these were topics about the devotees. But Mahaprabhu empowered him to write all this in so many beautiful books that he has written. Hari Bhakti Vilas, Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Brihad Vaishnav Toshini. And of course, in the form of Labanga Manjari, Sanatana Goswami serves Srimati in the Nitya Nikunj Leela. So these are just some of the vast glories of Sanatana Goswami. And here at his Bhajan-kutira, we pray that we can touch one drop of the ocean of Prem Ras that he has described, and inviting us to enter into by sadhu sangha and by reading the beautiful literatures that he has composed, that were instructed, that he was instructed to write by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Vanchakalpatrubhyascha kripa sindhubhayeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Sanatana Goswami ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. So thank you very much, Tapasri Maharaj, for that most enlightening katha about Sanatana Goswami. We are always grateful to hear the glories of the wonderful Goswamis' pastimes and their philosophy and siddhanta. Hare Krishna. So now we are going to continue on our parikrama, on our short parikrama, and we're going to walk around back onto the parikrama path, and we're going to just take another right before we get onto the road leading back to Manasiganga. And here we're going to have darshan of the beautiful, recently built Mukharavinda temple. So this Mukharavinda temple is understood to be the lotus face of Giriraj. And I'll just read something from Srila Gurudev's Vrindavan Parikrama book here. On the northern bank of Manasiganga is the lotus face, Mukharavinda, Mukhar means face, of Sri Govardhan. Govardhan's form is that of a sitting cow. His hind part is Puchari. He has turned his neck to place his lotus face near his stomach, which is the town of Govardhan. His two eyes are Radhakund and Shamkund. There is a beautiful temple here with a Shila of Giriraj's lotus face. Every day he is given Abhishek and receives worship and offerings of Bhoga. Festivals are also organized here on Anakut and Deepavali. So this is a very beautiful temple that we're having darshan here, and practically all the yatris, all the pilgrims who perform their Govardhan Parikrama, they come and they have darshan here of Manasiganga from this place, Mukharavinda. And the beautiful Govardhan Shilas that are on the altar here, they're very large, huge Shilas that anyone can bathe with milk and sugar and yogurt. And I can remember every single time Srila Gurudev would ever come to Govardhan, he would always come first and perform beautiful abhishek of these shilas here. He would bring 10, 20 kilos of sugar, 20 kilos of yogurt, and the brahmacharis would be carrying these huge bags and pots of milk and yogurt and sugar and ghee, and he would perform regularly nice abhishek of Giriraj. And in this VRAJA-MANDAL Parikrama book, there's a very beautiful photograph of Gurudev performing that abhishek. So Gurudev, as we've said so many times, is such a pure Brijabasi and had such love for all of these pastime places. It is only due to his enthusiastic affection for Vrindavan that we are able to speak anything in remembrance of these pastime places. For so many years, he took us diligently to all these different pastime places. He had such a great gift that he wanted to share with the whole world. And for so many of us, we were fortunate to come. Even if we only came once on one parikrama, then that Braja flavor would have been instilled in our hearts forever. If the pure Brijabasi is offering this potent refuge from the Mayic suffering of this world, then we should grab it easily with two hands. This is the only ingredient to make our lives successful, this enthusiasm. Krishna bhakti rasabhavita mati kriyatom yatita labhyate tatra lolyam. This lolyam, this enthusiasm to perform parikrama, this enthusiasm to perform our sadhana, this enthusiasm during the month of Kartik to remember all of these sweet pastimes. For the last 15 days now, we've been describing so many different pastime places. And I hope that the devotees, even though I'm unqualified to speak on any of these places, I hope that they have, just by hearing the names of these places, been reminded of them and can meditate on them daily to do this Manasi Parikrama of Brahma-mandal, and please our beloved Gurudev, who will no doubt bestow so much mercy upon us to have these pastimes playing eternally within our hearts and consciousnesses. So this is our sadhya, this is our goal, and to eventually appreciate our true identity as being a Palyadasi of Srimati Radharani in some future birth. But by the mercy of Gurudev and hearing about his pastimes here, then surely some of that flavor will eventually take root in the heart and gradually begin to manifest. So we are hoping to spend more and more time in associating with these pastime places to get the dust that Srila Gurudev is bestowing. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Mukharavinda ki jai, Gaud Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. So now our parikrama is concluded. We're just going to come back to the main street and we're going to walk up again to the road which leads directly to Hari-deva ultimately, where we started, and then we'll go to the left and back to our Giridhari Gaudiya Mat to honor sumptuous prasadam. VRAJA-MANDAL Parikrama 2018 ki jai, Vaishnavas ki jai, Gaud Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Vanshakapatrubhyascha, Kripa Sindhavevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha.